Okay, welcome to another Nerd Stalker interview. Hello, this is Greg Florio. Good morning. This is Greg Florio, aka Social Greg on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network. Today, we're going to do our monthly startup blog insights for June, and on one of Taffy Williams' articles titled "4 Ways to Reduce Tunnel Vision." And we were talking offline about another thing, and he said it was very appropriate for and timely to have this segment. So anyway, Taffy Williams, entrepreneur and co-founder and CEO of Colonial TDC, will be discussing in depth some of the themes in his article. So anyway, good morning, Taffy, and welcome to another Startup Blog Insights for June, live from North Carolina, right?
Hi. Yep. Hi. How are you doing?
Good.
I guess you can tell we have sunshine today.
Oh, right. It's very bright. It's been nice out here too, as well. The full moon has been out and we've been actually able to see it without fog. So it's kind of interesting. But anyway, let's get into this. As a founder and CEO, it's important to help the team focus as well as let them do their jobs. And you were kind of alluding to that in the article. And it's your job to know when to do those things and when to let go of those things. But when I think of leadership tunnel vision, it's almost too much focus on one thing, right?
Yeah, it's really common. I mean, it's as the person running the company, going out talking to investors and telling them we're going to do A, B, C, and D. You come back into your team and you say, we're going to do these. And sometimes your team says, oh, no, we're not. And they have reasons for that. And you say, oh, yeah, we have to. And so you tend to not always pay attention. You be so focused on the goals that you set that you forget to get their input and try to make sure that where you're headed is the right place. And so it becomes very easy to have that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you identify 4 ways you could actually help that process, at least in your head, as a leader. Yeah. And remember everyone, this is from a founder CEO perspective that Taffy always speaks from, and which, he's been for many years in different roles, different companies. And so anyway, let's talk about the first one, which addresses selecting the best direction, which is called identify the target.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're not going to end up in the right location if you don't decide what it is location you want to end up. You're like, I like to always use going to grandma's house, but if you want to go to grandma's house, you need to decide first you're going to grandma's house. The second thing you need to decide is how you're going to go. And then you may want to think about some alternate routes just in case. Defining the right target up front is essential. And sometimes you can have more than one target. So let's suppose that, you have 3 different ways to manufacture a product and you want to look at it and says, okay, we don't really care which of the 3 ways that we end up with, unless we do the analysis and say one of them is cheaper, one of them is faster. So you need to look at those and assess them, but you need to define what your target is. But now you can create some additional, goals that you can achieve. But identifying that target is critical. And you want your team to sort of be involved in that process. If they're not on the same page that you are and working to achieve what it is that you set out to do, you end up in a situation where they may be pulling against you and trying to achieve a goal. And so you need to have them involved. You need to make sure you listen to what their input is. I mean, in one case, we were working in a company where it said, okay, we're going to manufacture a product and need it by this date. And you're going to go ahead and do it now. And the team is saying, you can't do that now. If you do that now and we run into problems later, the FDA is going to come in and shut the whole thing down, because if it doesn't work, we have to redo everything. So the CEO says, no, we're going to do it anyway. So what happens? You run your clinical trial. You find out that when you get ready to do your manufacturing runs that you have a problem. Now you got 6 months of crap just to be able to have the data count, and with the potential there that it would not count and you would have to do everything all over again, and the millions of dollars you spent are wasted. If you don't listen to your team and have them involved, and you don't try to plan out a strategy for success, and you don't pick the right target goals, and you don't pick the right timelines, you end up pushing everybody to achieve something that might not have been the best. So identifying the target and working with the people that are in your team are really an important part. That's the first step.
Well, interesting. I wanted to ask you a question as a leader. Is collaboration and consensus very important in this stage?
It can be. Sometimes you have to say, okay, I don't really care. We have to do it, and you have legitimate reasons. Make sure they understand the reasons. They may not, you can agree to disagree in the end, but you want to make sure that you filter and you hear what they've got to say, because maybe you missed something.
Right. And be open to actually listening,
I mean,
right?
you're supposed to be the one that has the greatest vision and the greatest oversight of everything taking place. It doesn't mean that you have the right answers, but because you know more about what's going on all the way across the board, you should be able to provide the input to help them understand why you need to do something, and then try to help them reach the determination on how to get there.
Right, right. And you know, there's a lot of factors involved with that desire, right? Like market timing,
Yeah.
competition, a lot of other things. So.
Like, okay, we got to raise money, and we need positive data in order to raise the money, and we need it by such and such a date, or we're going to run out of money by the time we get the data.
Great example.
There's more than one reason why you have to achieve a goal, and the goal may be at odds with what the team thinks they can do. But if they understand what you have to do and why you have to do it, and you get their buy-in and have them figure out ways to cut your risk, you may be able to achieve that with a lesser risk. And it's,
right.
You can certainly go after it with a greater risk, but why do that?
Right. Well, the second one's really important in talking about that, and it's that helps define planning, right? It's define multiple routes, right?
Yeah, there's more than one way to achieve success. I mean, if your overall goal is to end up with, first of all, there's always a chance that nobody's going to be happy with whatever you end up with anyway. I described that to you just a little while ago. And that happens. But what you can lay down as a game plan that says no matter what happens, it's better than what would happen if we didn't do this. So that's possible. But achieving more than one route is sometimes very important. So if you're trying to make something or manufacture it, and you have 3 different ways you can manufacture it, and you can identify clearly 3 different ones, and you can find a way to make the pieces come together so that you have less cost, but you can introduce and at least run 2 of them. You have a better chance of reaching your end goal, and maybe with a decreased cost of your product, or a higher value of the product, or better production, or something along those lines. So looking for more than one way to accomplish a goal helps you ensure your chance of reaching that goal by some means.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember, like, we did that in one place I worked at it, but the problem is at the end of the day we went into pre-production and we ran into a problem. I mean, it was actually a really technical problem. I mean, we couldn't achieve one of the specs that were key specs for this one product, and we had to kind of take another route into it. We thought we were gonna do it ourselves, and we had actually ended up looking at a partnership to try to develop this one consumable that was on the product. The consumable was the one that was like holding us up.
So suppose you had actually identified there was an alternate route before you started.
Yeah.
And you worked on yourself, and you had worked up the finding a partner and ran it in parallel, rather than have to step back, try to figure out how to reach your goal. You might have been able to all of a sudden switch, and you would have saved a lot of time and energy.
Yeah, that was a great example, and that was my bad. I was the product manager, and I should have actually identified that.
Shame on you.
See, that was mine. That was mine. I mean, I'll point at myself here. So anyway, let's go to the third one, which is this is pretty funny. Third one, helping businesses stand. Let's talk about the third one, which is monitor progress, which is really another thing that a CEO and a leader of an organization needs to do, right?
You have to call the team in regularly. You have to have them report on what's happening. You have to listen to issues that they face, help them sort through those issues and determine if you need to be picking up and running an alternate strategy, or if you need to be identifying a different end goal. Hopefully your team is aware of stuff. You want to monitor the progress. Let's suppose that you get to the end and you happen to be Apple, and you're trying to create your new iPhone, only to find out that China decided to not let your iPhone sell because it's too close to one that they currently sell, which happened recently, by the way. What strategy would you have done to make your iPhone slightly different so they couldn't argue that point? Or you're going out to create a product, and you find that midway through your manufacturing, somebody launches something that's very similar that's going to eat up part of your core market. Can you make an adjustment so that you now come in a better position to have a better market than you would have with high degree of competition? Those are the kinds of things you need to be looking at. You need to be looking at whether people are having hurdles that they can't get over and they're not telling you about it. There's always this fear, I'm going to get fired if I can't make this happen. If they're not, if you're not talking to them and finding out they got a serious issue, and all of a sudden at the end you found out one of the people that had a critical task didn't bother to tell you they had a problem and you didn't help them resolve it, everybody's hurt. So you have to monitor the progress. You have to make sure people are open and able to talk about it, and I'll talk about how to resolve the problems and things of that sort. And you just need to be aware of all of that and changes that take place in the marketplace. So monitor.
In the pharmaceutical areas that you kind of played in, as well as just general healthcare, how did you monitor progress? Was it just going around talking to people,
both,
having meetings, everything?
Both, everything. I would oftentimes walk into somebody's office and chat with them a while and try and get them to, give me their feedback and talk about, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that? We would have sometimes weekly or bi-weekly meetings. We would have them talk and report on objectives that had been set before. We would have somebody having taken notes and put them out, and we'll talk about, okay, this is what you're supposed to do, but where are you now? Try to get them to open up, and if they've got an issue, talk about it. Clearly you have to try to do those. It's easy to let that stuff slide because it means you have to spend time doing it. You have to spend time thinking about it, and people get upset with having meetings. But if you don't do it, you're starting to fail, by not keeping track of stuff and letting things that might slide. So it's kind of a fine balance there of trying to make sure that you are able to get to where you want to go and people are feeling empowered, but you're able to accomplish things.
I don't know if you ever seen this where we're on programs that you worked on, but it's funny. My team was always excited in the beginning, make all the meetings, and then suddenly, as we're closer to the finish line, it gets a drag. I mean, they'll still come, but you could just look in their faces like, I need to go work, I need to go do this, otherwise we can't. Why do I have to be in this meeting? And it's so funny. Towards the end, they're just tired. I guess it's just like any team that's working on a product for a long time. It's like, oh, another weekly meeting or another, update, but a lot of these updates are important from the investor standpoint, right? You need to give them some confidence that you're on target, right?
Absolutely. The investors are wanting regular updates, and and sometimes they get emails, sometimes you get phone calls, sometimes you get other kinds of stuff. And while you can't give out information that you don't give out to the rest of the investment community, they still want to know. And sometimes you put out a summary to the investor community. Those are different things you do. But sometimes you're at a conference and you're going to make a presentation. But you do need to keep people updated on where you are and what your timelines are.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's move to the last one, which is I don't know. I call it leadership openness. A clear vision, as opposed to what we were talking about, tunnel vision. Be vigilant for the ways to improve, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're creating something, you plan to sell the product, and and if you pay attention, sometimes you may see an alternative product that's superior. I'll give you an example. WD-40 was created to coat missiles and rocket ships. They use it as a special coating, right? Somebody in the organization decided to take it home and try it for some home use stuff and found out that it worked. They came back and they ultimately somehow turned it into a market that everybody recognizes. Okay. How about the Post-its, right? The glue on the back of this thing was another example. It's an example of a failure. The glue was supposed to be a really great glue, but it turned out to be one that didn't stick. Somebody, according to the literature, somebody was using the glue to stick something in their hymnals at church. Realized, okay, maybe we can use it. They turned it into a product that's a really big product. This is the idea of looking at what you have and trying to figure out, is there a way to make it better than what you have, or attach and get a bigger market. And this, again, this comes from looking at it and thinking in a more expansive manner.
Yeah, and that's hard, right? If you're developing one thing and you said, okay, we're moving towards this direction and we're going to develop this, it takes I think it takes a really a strong leader to try to, not only look at what they're doing, but look at the whole picture, right?
You just want somebody in your organization, if that light bulb goes off, to come and tell you, hey, did you think about this?
Right, right.
Right?
Well, I wish it.
There's a lot of products out there that may have never made it to products if somebody in the organization hadn't thought of how to turn it into a product that was worth more.
Now, have you seen in the I mean, you've been in the pharmaceuticals in a long time. Is that pretty common where you would develop one drug and then you'd say, or something, and you say, wow, this could be used for something else based on the data, right?
Yeah, sometimes they do it based on the data. So there's a product called ProScar, which is used for BPH, which is a prostate-related problem that causes swelling. And they noticed that people were getting hair growth whenever they were taking the drug. And so they relaunched it as Propecia, which is with a lower dose for growth of hair.
Oh, that's how Propecia
was very similar in its use, and it turned into something. So yes, this is very common that people realize by seeing data there's another alternative market, and they will relaunch and change the characteristics of the product into something that can be used another way. I highlight some of these things in the book. My book on Think Agile. So it talks a little bit about that, but it is a place where being aware and thinking and having your team being more innovative and trying to encourage them to be innovative is helpful. When you bottle them up and you say you're only going to do this, and you don't encourage them to think in a creative manner, they may come up with an idea and never tell you, or maybe never even think about it because they were never encouraged to do it. It requires some training over time to get them to draw that out.
Well, yeah, and I think everyone doesn't realize, I think you worked in both the private and the public sectors, right?
I worked doing basic research and applied research, either in a research basis or in a officer and director basis for more than 40 years. I've applied for patents. I have patents that I've done. We always go through and look at products and try and figure out how to do it. I help maintain and deal with patent portfolios. I talk to inventors all the time. Being inventive and being creative is an important part of that process, but it's also an important process of trying to have your team be inventive and creative, because the more they are so, the better your chances are they'll come up with something that you've never thought of.
Yeah, and every team I find it, I don't know, Taffy, you could weigh in on this one. Every team's a little bit different in the dynamic. So one way of doing one team in a previous situation may not always apply to the current situation that you're in, right?
People are all different. You can't, they're not ever going to agree 100% with whatever it is you think is the case. It's a matter of listening to what is there, try to find some common ground, but making sure that they know that you value an opinion, even if you don't agree with it.
Right. Right. And that approach is so important, I find. It's like you could be very arrogant, and usually that doesn't really go well with a lot of people. Or you could do a general approach, listen, take in the input, and kind of, just make them understand in a way what's going on around them and why it's good for the company, like you're saying. So anyway, well, thank you so much again. I know we don't do this as often as we used to, but I really appreciate your time, Taffy, and in your insights, obviously, into leadership and being an entrepreneur. So anyway, let's close off the interview. And again, thanks again. So how can listeners get a hold of you?
Well, at the bottom of the screen, it'll below my name, it should say colonialtdc.com. That's the website for the company. There are links in that website to the blog, which is Startup Blog, and there are links in that site to the book, which is Think Agile, How Savvy Entrepreneurs Adapt in Order to Succeed. You'll find some of the kinds of things I talk about in there, and it's the Think Agile concept. If you think about all the stuff that we just talked about, fits within that framework. And it's the ability to try to make yourself more open and consider ways to accomplish things to ensure your better chances of success.
Yep. Well, thank you again. Anyway, that was Taffy Williams of Colonial TDC, and Startup Blog is where he writes his personal thoughts as well as shares his photography. And he's also a writer, as he said, of the book Thinking Agile, and you can get that not only through his link but through Amazon.com. It's just search for it there, and you'll.
It's available. It's available as an audiobook now, as a Kindle, and as an actual hard copy book if you still read.
Excellent. Well, anyway, I appreciate that. Wow, that's great.
All right,
and that's good news. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone. This is Greg Valoria, aka Social Greg, on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network, where we believe in tech, startups, design, and you. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and be careful out there. Anyway, have a great day, Taffy.
Bye.